Hey everyone! As you know, there are different methods you can use in sculpting to increase your poly count, or in other words, your vertex count. So I will have this plane selected and go to the modifier properties. There we have the multi-resolution and subdivision surface. Those are two modifiers in which we can use to increase the poly count of our object. So increasing this, we increase the number of vertices. Let me just apply that. As you can see, this is what a subdivided mesh looks like. Let's add another plane. And the multi-resolution modifier is similar to that. So we subdivide it. But in sculpt mode, we have two more modes which we can use to subdivide while we are sculpting. One of them being the remesh option, and the other one, Blender specifically, being Dynamic Topology. So what does it do? Dynamic Topology gives you the option to add subdivisions in real time. So as you sculpt, you don't need to constantly remesh or subdivide to get more detail, but detail will be automatically added to your stroke. So why don't we test it out? So first you want to enable it, and it will always give you this warning. But do not worry about it, since it basically says using this will destroy everything you usually do after you finish the mesh sculpting. In other words, UVs, other attributes, you do not assign them on plain objects. So the sculpting is like the first thing you do, or if you're making an object, you first make it in the edit mode, then you transfer to the sculpt mode to add more details. So what you want to do is click OK. And now let's go over some of the options we have. So first we have detail size. And pay attention because this value here is reversed. So in this case, it's going to be set on relative detail to you. And let's increase its number to like 7. And you can see I painted a stroke. Then, if I increase the number more, you can see our stroke has less detail. So, in conclusion, the lesser the number, the smaller the number, the more detailed your stroke will be. And then, after detail size, we have the so-called refine method, which basically makes minimal changes. So for you, let's start with the subdivided edges, because that should be default for you. Subdivide edges, I said. What it does, it subdivides geometry to match the size of the brush you're using. Okay, let me do another stroke. As you can see, it is the size of our brush. Let me now switch to the collapse edges, like here. And what it should do, it will simplify that it can match the detail level of the brush. As you can see, there's the difference. Now, our stroke has minimal detail, but when I cross with this part, you can see it just becomes detailed for a second. And that's basically all it does. While the third option, in other words, the subdivide collapse, is just a bit of both, so you can see here. Okay, this plane is getting messy. Let me real quick just delete it and add another one. Another victim for our retopology and typology things. Okay, let's enable it. Down here we also have the smooth shading option, and it just makes the faces you paint be smooth shaded instead of flat shaded, and difference is barely visible, so feel free to keep that off. And now we get to basically the main part of dynamic topology and what it can do, and it is the detail. So first is the relative detail. And what it does is The difference is when you zoom in, like here, you're going to get a very detailed stroke. But if we zoom out and try to do the same thing, you can see we have less detail. Otherwise, relative detail defines the amount of detail. So the closer we get, we are going to have more detail, and the further we get, we're going to have less detail. Let me undo my strokes. The other option we have is constant detail. Try to guess what it does. Well, it basically makes sure that you have the same amount of detail. Even if you paint from like further or closer, you can see the detail is the same. Then we have an interesting one called brush detail. So if I zoom in, zoom out, the detail is the same. You know why? Because the amount of detail varies on your brush size. So if I make my brush smaller, we are going to have more detail. If I make my brush bigger, we're going to have less detail. And then we have the last option. This is called manual detail. And manual detail will not subdivide the mesh, and basically increasing and decreasing the resolution value makes no difference. You can see I can increase it. I cannot get a single stroke. Let me just decrease it like on 6. I will not get a single stroke. And it's not because it's broken, but because if I go to the edit mode, we can see this mesh basically has 1, 2, 4 vertices and like one side. And which means if you subdivide the object, let's say a bunch of times, then let me just apply it real quick. Apply, and then go back to the sculpt mode, re-enable dynamic topology. Now we will draw the same whatever we do. So we can make the brush small, we can be far away, and it will be the same. Let me just delete it and add another plane for these planes. Well, at least we are not wasting paper on this. And the last option, if you noticed something, for example, we have this new option, it just appeared. So on the relative detail, it's not here, but on constant and manual detail, we have this option, detail float fill. So let me just switch to constant. And what it does, it fills the whole mesh with the value you set here. So if I set this to like 7.3 and this of float fill, now this whole mesh has a resolution of 7.3. We can increase the number. Let's detail float fill, we can increase the number. And the good part is we can also decrease it, as you can see here. And increase it once again. And yes, it's pretty amazing because in reality, if this option didn't exist, you will just need to constantly remesh and remesh, just click the button. But here you can just enable dynamic topology, go to, let's say, relative detail. If you want to sculpt like eyes, for example, let me just real quick, like this. And even smaller detail, you can do that. And if you want to like sculpt the face, you can do that, zoom out. And it's pretty nice, especially recommended for those who are just starting off in the Blender, because it will help you so much. I also want to thank you for watching, hope you learned something new. Stay tuned, because in the next video, we will combine the knowledge we learned from this lesson also with a lesson about VDM making. If you haven't, be sure to check that out. So we are going to be making the horns from the VDM thumbnail using Dynamic Topology and VDMs. I hope to see you there. Bye bye!